As if they don't have too much on their plates. The Kings of Combat Sports Podcast, John and Wade. They talk about the things they did that day. They'll analyze the work of Triple H. Rewind-A-SmackDown. 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 Rewind-A-SmackDown.
And hello, everybody on the YouTube and free podcast side of things. This is Rewind-A-SmackDown. I am waiting, and this is Neal Flanagan. We're giving John Pollock the rare night off because he is going to be a very, very, very busy man this weekend with the amount of activity we have. But Neal, welcome to the free side of things here for our lovely, lovely audience that just might consume this review itself.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Wade, for having me. And yes, John, a busy man this weekend, Saturday night's main event. And then, of course, the marathon that we just discussed for those on the Café. The marathon pay-per-view that will be Double or Nothing on Sunday. You're a busy man too, Wade, because you've got 3 nights on the trot.
Oh, yeah, everybody in the pro wrestling world has been very busy. And maybe just to give you a bit of a glimpse into how busy we've all been over the past week. We have some great releases over the past week, including I wanted to just continue to give some extra attention to the Dark Side of the Ring, the Scream Queen Daphne review put out this week by Kate from Montreal and Karen Peterson. This was just an excellent discussion about the latest edition of Dark Side of the Ring, which has received very rave reviews from people who have seen it. Even if you haven't seen the documentary, which I'm told is a very heavy watch. I think it's worth listening to the discussion to see maybe if the episode might be something you want to consume, and just to kind of hear the very great analysis from these two. We enjoyed this review so much, John and I, that we have decided to release it for all audiences Saturday afternoon on our free feeds and our YouTube. So we thought it was a very important discussion, and we wanted everybody to hear it. So look out for that. Also out now early for Post Wrestling Cafe patrons is John Pollock's interview with Mark Capani. You might ask, who is Mark Capani? What is Mark Capani? Why is Mark Capani? Well, you shall find out, because Mark Capani is the former Muhammad Hassan, and he is the subject of the season finale of Dark Side of the Ring, which airs next week. John conducted an interview with him and discussing a whole lot about his particular career. This is already out now for Post Wrestling Cafe patrons. It'll be out for free for all members, or for all listeners on Monday, but get a sneak peek of it right now. John Pollock actually appears in said episode, although he has not watched it yet. So we're going to get John's thoughts on that next week as well. Of course, I also wanted to draw attention to Collision Course with Kate and CNO talking about last night's collision. And of course, our man Neal Flanagan and John Pollock for our Double and Espresso patrons talking about all the President's Men. I believe John might actually release a free sample of this to our free our members, our free audience as well. So
I have heard that whisper, yes.
Giving a lot out there for all of you guys, all right? Because all we want to do is tell you what cool work we've been doing over at the Post Wrestling Cafe in the event that you might want to sign up, including XL editions of this particular podcast where Neal and I just spent 30 minutes talking about WrestleMania 42 being pulled from New Orleans, some reaction from organizers such as WrestleCon's owner talking about the fallout of a move like this and what impact it has on his business, Zoey Starks' injury, and additions to AEW Double or Nothing. So postwrestlingcafe.com is where you can go to sign up to support us, get ad-free time-stamped editions of shows like this and our upcoming pay-per-view reviews. And yeah, so that's that. All right, Neal, are you ready to talk about tonight's SmackDown?
I am.
SmackDown comes to us this week from Savannah, Georgia. And so first of all, 6,631 tickets out according to WrestleTix, which might sound a bit low, but this is near or at capacity for this relatively smaller building for the WWE. I wanted to maybe discuss the idea of this like featured superstars listing that they typically have for these events. So this was maybe notable last week, and it's still notable this week, where Cody Rhodes was listed as a quote-unquote featured superstar. When you go to like the WWE.com events page, did not appear at last week, not even in a dark segment. And considering this was Georgia, I think maybe there might have been some increased expectation that Cody was there. As far as I know, as far as you know, Not even in a dark segment. No Cody Rhodes. Period. Right.
Not that, and I was monitoring social media. If there's something's happened, it's been since we've come on stream.
So Cody Watch is still on. T minus, I don't know how many days. What, 60 at this point? So
something like that.
We await the arrival. Could be as early as this Saturday. We shall see. So we start things off here on this edition of SmackDown with Tiffany Stratton, who comes out talking about her Money in the Bank win last year. And she is about to issue a warning for next year's winner when Alexa Bliss shows up to interrupt. Alexa Bliss, of course, is already qualified for the match. Bliss introduces herself to Tiffany Stratton, and we are reminded that this is a first-time meeting of these two, at least, with a promo segment with each other. Bliss says she also cashed in once on Nia Jax to win her world championship, but she actually liked Nia. So imagine what she'll do to somebody she doesn't know, like Tiffany. At this point, Charlotte Flair arrives. A ton of boos for her immediately. She's definitely getting the Dom Mysterio, Don Callis reaction, and I think she's playing with the energy pretty well. What do you think, Neal?
I think that really threw her off in the beginning, and I think she's now expecting it and maybe sort of riding the wave of those boos a little better.
Charlotte says she's going to win her qualifier tonight, but Stratton calls Charlotte a hypocrite for, in the past, calling Stratton's cash-in an easy way out. Stratton calls them both a little too vintage for her, and it gets a pretty strong reaction, including my wife actually reacted very strongly to this line as well. She a rare occasion where she was watching this a bit of wrestling with me. She calls herself an upgraded version of the two of them, and that it's always tippy time. Your thoughts on this opening, Neal?
I thought the vintage line was very good myself, actually, as well. And it did get that reaction from the crowd. It's interesting to hear that your spouse, what did she do? Ooh, oh no, she didn't. Or what did But anyway, the crowd very into Tiffany, with it, who still has a kind of a traditionally heel type persona. So I think, whatever they're doing with her, it seems to be working. And the heat for Charlotte is really something. It's just been growing week on week. I'm glad that she is getting more comfortable with the boos. Like I said, in the beginning, she really seemed quite thrown off by it. At the moment, no, yeah, she's, for those who are listening, Ways brought up a photograph of
a funny screen capture I found on Twitter here. Thank
Charlotte,
you for the person who crapped it.
Yeah. She's just kind of like brushing these boos off.
I'll say, Neal, for all the criticism that I think we were giving that feud during the build-up, both of them I think have come out a bit stronger, wouldn't you say? The match itself, like, maybe under-delivered to most, but like as in terms of characters, in terms of identity, in terms of just like how well they know themselves, I think both are much more developed coming out of that feud.
Yeah, it's definitely solidified the characters that they're playing, and I feel this is a sense thing rather than because you would need to speak to the performers to know that they're more comfortable in those roles. They may not be best friends in real life, but I feel like they're working together at a much better level now than, of course, they were that fateful night.
Yeah, Stratton's confidence continues to grow with every one of these appearances, and I really do think she's going into the role of being champion, which means she's likely to lose the belt probably shortly. I've been pretty down on the SmackDown women's roster, at least in comparison to Raw, but I mean, this offered us a really good glimpse of like what is to come. It really feels like between Bliss, Charlotte, Stratton, and now Giulia entering the mix, like the division is looking a lot more balanced to me in terms of star power and also in-ring ability. So I'm actually a lot more optimistic after seeing a segment like this for the women on SmackDown. And then we get to our first match here. It is a Money in the Bank qualifier between Zelina Vega, Charlotte Flair, and Giulia. This is Giulia's first match on SmackDown since officially signing last week. Yeah, this is her first match, right? She didn't have a match last week, did she?
No.
Yeah, okay, good. Big moonsault to the floor from Vega onto the others sends us to our first commercial break. We come back from the break, and Charlotte has Zelina in an electric chair. Giulia hits a top rope drop kick to Charlotte, which knocks them both down. Zelina head scissors takedown into a dragon sleeper, but Giulia breaks it with a big knee. Charlotte lands a moonsault onto both opponents laid down. Giulia delivers the Rings of Saturn, while Vega delivers a 619 to Charlotte. So everybody getting a good chance to shine here in this very fast-paced match, as all of these triple threat matches have been. Charlotte locks in the figure four. Zelina breaks that up, hits the code red to Giulia, but Charlotte breaks that up. Very strong reaction by this point. Charlotte locks in the figure eight to Zelina. Giulia breaks it with a double stomp to Charlotte's knee. This sends Charlotte to the floor, which allows Giulia to hit her Northern Lights bomb to Zelina Vega for the win. And what I felt was a pretty strong match, Neal. What did you think?
Me too. I thought the match was well laid out, including how it was won. The stomp to, as the announcers reminded us, the surgically repaired knee of Charlotte. So, a convincing way to take Charlotte out of the match, leaving Giulia free for the pin. There were a couple of messy spots, like the double 619 didn't even touch Giulia, and she looked sort of like momentarily unsure what to do, whether to sell or.
That's a far reach for Zelina.
Yes, it certainly is. And I think the spots where it got a little shaky did involve Zelina, but I don't particularly blame her. I think perhaps when you're a smaller performer, it's down to the opponent to do the selling. And we saw that very recently. Zelina's first title defense was against Piper Niven, and that was a really solid match. And Piper, as sort of the monster of the women's division. Well, there's Nia, of course, but one of the monsters of the women's division on SmackDown sold really well for her and very convincingly. And I think sometimes when there's a Rana or whatever, the sort of moves of Code Red, it takes the other dance partner to really convincingly hit that for Zelina. And there were a couple of moments in the match where that I spotted a kind of looked a wee bit iffy there, but generally solid, and I like the way it was laid out.
This match to me was very tough to call on paper, because all three kind of have an argument to not get pinned here. Certainly Charlotte Flair, you wouldn't expect to get pinned, and she didn't get pinned here. But Giulia making her debut, you don't expect to get pinned. Zelina Vega as U.S. champion, you also don't expect to get pinned. But the option they went with, I actually really enjoyed and made a whole lot of sense. Having Giulia pin Zelina Vega, which establishes Giulia certainly very strong in her debut on SmackDown, pinning the U.S. champion, and also sets her up, of course, for a future U.S. championship match against Zelina Vega. So I actually quite liked it, and I don't know how you feel about this, Neal, but I actually, in seeing this, I didn't really like Giulia's debut on Raw with Roxanne. I never felt that there was chemistry in the characters. I felt that was poorly explained and poorly executed on screen. So I kind of like Giulia more as a single star here, at least right now. She's somebody that I really think could have used that extra year in NXT to further develop her character, but clearly they feel she's ready, and maybe we can assume something of an Io Sky playbook for her, where like the game might be not necessarily giving her a ton of promo time or even that much character development, but giving her a lot of in-ring time to get over that way.
Yeah, she's got a really good pedigree in-ring wise, but I've heard you say it before, way about, maybe a bit more time in NXT. And I did feel tonight she wasn't getting much of a reaction from what was a fairly lively crowd at this point. Couple of her moves were honestly quite missed by the crowd. They didn't. So I don't know how many people were NXT devotees in this audience, but I'm on the fence. She's very good in ring, and perhaps that Io Sky playbook that you mentioned could be followed here. And this women's division did need a bit of life to it, a bit more life to it. So I like that before the match even began, there was that bleed over. Giulia was coming out for this match as the previous segment was ending. And so, she put her eyes on Tiffany and the championship as she went by, so just sort of establishing that she's a threat.
Yeah. Although I have to think, coming off of this, Giulia versus Zelina
Yeah.
will be a match that we're going to get shortly. And I really like the US title level for Giulia, at least to establish her. She's not going to go through NXT like for an extended duration. Maybe this secondary championship is exactly what it's sort of intended for a talent like her. So in the Money in the Bank match so far, we have Giulia, Roxanne, Alexa, and Rhea Ripley with 2 spots remaining. DIY are in the back cutting a promo. They cut a heel promo on the Profits, Motor City Machine Guns, and Fraxiom ahead of the Fraxiom and Profits match tonight. Ciampa says something needs to change, and it starts with Ciampa's match against Sabin tonight. So, are you getting used to Tomaso Ciampa without the beard?
Not really. No, he still looks weird to me, and I prefer the beard to come back in a wee bit more. You know, he's growing it back, though. I think we saw some growth tonight. But
I'm sure Ciampa himself prefers it. I mean, I don't know if we ever spoke about it on these shows, but he cut it off by accident. Well, he fell. So he says he fell like because of like a dizzy spell, you know, and it required stitches on his chin. Therefore, they had to cut the beard. So I don't think it was not a willing absence.
Piece of barbering. Yeah.
So
I didn't love the promo. This whole, you know, conspiracy theory thing. You know, they're naming everyone as part of a long list of people conspiring to hold them back. You know.
Are you looking for more like of a personal grudge at this point? Like, because we're still very much building the division as a whole.
Yeah.
Is that working for you or no?
It's a really strong in-ring division. We've seen that over many, many weeks. Yeah. I think it needs a little more storytelling and a bit more coherence, because what we shouldn't have is what we got a little while ago with Nick Aldis and his whiteboard trying to explain what the hell is going on in this in this tag division, and that doesn't even count. You know, we didn't see Pretty Deadly tonight. There are others in this as well.
The whiteboard's about to get maybe a lot more messy coming off of this episode, which, you know, continued to put the tag division on focus. So maybe more on that a bit later. So Zelina Vega is in the back. She is met by Chelsea Green and the Secret Hervis, and Chelsea makes fun of her for losing. Look how much Chelsea towers over Vega here. Okay, now we know Vega's short. We know, I guess Chelsea might be like at least average or above average height. But she was also wearing like platform shoes here on top of this, so they were going for like an Andre Mean Gene effect, or I should say Andre Vince McMahon effect here, and I guess certainly effective. Zelina decks her. Big brawl ensues with the Secret Hervis, and then Meechin and BFAB come in. Nick Aldis comes in and makes the Secret Hervis versus Meechin and BFAB for tonight. So 3-hour show.
I'll do the John roll and say, yes, he managed to find time in his packed card that he'd spent all week putting together to book a match.
Well, he has to assume, you know, something like this will go down, and it did. So we got Tomaso Ciampa versus Chris Sabin coming up next. This is a first-time singles match between the two, which I initially was a little surprised by, considering how long both have been around, but they have never crossed paths, at least until they got to the main roster here. So Ciampa grabs Gargano's jacket, throws it at Sabin when he's on the apron, which sets him up for Willow's Bell. After the commercial break, Ciampa delivers an air raid crash on the apron for a 2 count. Ciampa starts selling his knee, playing possum here, and this allows a returning Candice LeRae to drape Sabin's neck over the top rope, setting Sabin up for Ciampa's big running knee, giving Tomaso Ciampa the victory here. So, the return of Candice LeRae and the return of her attachment to a heel DIY. What do you think of this, Neal?
Yeah, obviously the sort of double-headed feeling of a bit of a groaner in a match that was really very good. 2 really good workers doing a really good match who are normally tag team wrestlers. But the angle is good. I like Candice in this role with these guys. It's somewhere for her. It's a role for her outside of generally the women's division, where she's just a bit lost, I think. So it gives her a bit of identity here. And if they can develop DIY into something more than just sort of the, you know, there's a conspiracy against us, I think that she will help in that.
Yeah, I agree. First, I thought the match was pretty solid here and got some good reactions, and I put that entirely on the in-ring content itself, because I think Sabin at this point hasn't really been given much character depth. He's half of a tag team, but they achieved a strong reaction just from their in-ring work. Candice being paired with them, I mean, I think it's it's better than what she was doing before, I suppose, which is, playing second to Nia, and that seems to have fizzled out. I think it's a better fit for Candice at this point because, if I have to be honest, she hasn't really impressed me in ring in quite some time. And at this point, like with, I think the standard of the division possibly being a lot higher now with, an entry of a Giulia, or just even like the quality that a Tiffany Stratton and even a Nia Jax, might have been putting out there. A Candice LeRae doesn't really offer that much that feels special, that so maybe where she could find her specialness is as a part of the DIY, playing the sort of a third person outside on the floor.
Yeah, I agree.
Fraxiom are interviewed. Tonight is the biggest night of their careers. Fraser says when he and Axiom are on the same page, they can beat any tag team on the planet. All right, so we shall see.
It was, very by the numbers sort of promo.
How about any tag team in the nether realm?
Yeah, or not on this planet,
not on the planet,
some other planet.
Oh, we shall get those answers in the future, perhaps.
My takeaway from this was Nathan Fraser's NF vest. I kind of want that, because
what's
my initials. It's his initials, and so they're all my initials, and I thought it looked kind of cool.
Interesting.
I don't know if I can carry it off, but I could try.
Okay. You can make one.
Yeah. I'm not much of a seamstress, but I'll try.
Interesting. Cool. Damian Priest and Drew, they continue their backstage brawl as they make their way to the outside. A big pull apart ahead of tomorrow's match. So this is sort of all the build we had for this particular match. And I guess not much more needed. They spent months kind of building their feud, heading into WrestleMania. They've kind of said all they needed to say. Tomorrow is the cage match. There.
Yeah. Wait, do you mind if I rewind ever so slightly?
Yeah.
Just before that, there was an Arby's presents the Cena heel run retrospective, and it was just a very stark reminder to me. It was just clips of the heel turn so far, clips of his heel speeches, library footage of crowds that used to dislike him and give him the thumbs down when he won all the time. The Mania belt shot, the I don't need you, you don't matter to me, I am going to ruin wrestling, I'm going to be the last real champion. And my takeaway from all of this was, I hate this. This is bad. This heel run isn't working. It wasn't just the Dwayne confusion and the Dwayne involvement. It wasn't just the booking of the WrestleMania match. Even if you take all of that away, the render, the heel render even of John Cena is just him looking kind of sad. He just looks kind of expressionless, but he looked kind of glum, in all of the match graphics. It has not hit for me once, I kind of enjoyed it when the only time I thought, okay, they're making a bit of an effort was when he said to Cody that when Cody turned The Rock down, he felt, well, now I've got him, because if he's not willing to do what it takes, then there was some effort to kind of explain that. But everything else, I really feel gets boiled down to the heel, you people trope, which is poor. It's just not great booking for one of the biggest stars this company has ever created. And of course, he has had a huge part in building up that creation for himself as well. But it all just, this recap just reminded me how poor the heel turn has been, right down to the other week with the press conference attack on R-Truth, which I thought just looked goofy and silly and didn't have an audience even. So I don't know what you think, Wade, but I really feel like in the longer term, before the year is out, they're going to have to turn him back so that they can have a celebration of Cena.
Well, that is certainly the plan, right?
Gotta be.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I don't think that would be an indication that they felt this failed if they did that. I think that's going to be the plan anyway. Well, I'll just say I don't disagree with you on the quality of the heel performance from John Cena. It's been a much more predictable, generic, heel performance than I think I would have guessed. However, I'm still energized by this because I still
Okay.
think there's incredible novelty in seeing John Cena be a heel. The way that I think there's still, for at least a lot of people in that first year of the NWO, might have still seen novelty in Hulk Hogan being a heel for the first time after so many years. I thought Hulk Hogan, like when you're just kind of basing a heel performance, I thought his heel performance and his heel promo was kind of shitty. But it was effective because it was Hulk Hogan, and I think to me, Cena still has very much effect of that effect. You know, it's not necessarily a great performance, but because it's John Cena doing it, it feels big and it feels important, and it's going to get a reaction. So I still like the event of it, but if we're just kind of picking on like the performance itself, not to even mention the inconsistency in the storytelling,
Yeah.
thanks to Dwayne Johnson and Travis Scott and whatnot. Although the Travis Scott thing, maybe we'll see a payoff. Where I would not disagree with that. So
I just feel that creatively they haven't given him enough to work with as well, particularly in the speaking parts of it. Tomorrow night's a real opportunity for him to get heat, with R-Truth.
yeah, I mean, I have to also imagine like with Cena, he probably dictates a lot of his creative, and if there's blame to be laid out, certainly it might be in some of the changing of the direction. But I also think like I feel confident in saying you could blame John Cena himself perhaps for having this certain vision, which might be limited due to his like infrequent dates.
Yeah.
But I think it's shown glimpses of like strong, interesting, compelling like character work, but for the most part has kind of rode the wave of like you people,
Yeah.
probably a little bit too long. So we got 12 months, 7 months of this remaining. Let's see what he could do. The big question is whenever that Cody rematch happens, does he lose the championship? And does he turn back in a babyface then? Or are we dragging this heel run out all the way until December? When does the face turn is coming, but when is it going to come?
I think it needs to come in good time for the audience to really buy into it and want to have perhaps a dedicated PLE to this man to celebrate his career, a tribute to hustle, loyalty, respect, and all the above. And that needs, a convincing turn back to a baby face that has a few miles under it. So I would want to do it by late autumn, I think.
Interesting. All right, let's go to back to SmackDown. We still have a lot to cover here because we got Solo and JC Mateo and Jacob Fatu. They're facing Phoenix and Jimmy Uso tonight. Jacob tells JC, I don't trust you, I don't know you, and I don't like you. You're not my blood, you're not my family. And he tells Solo that he didn't need their help at Backlash. Solo tells him to channel this negative energy into their tag match tonight. Solo says he wants Jimmy back into this group, and it starts with their match this evening. Solo then tries to do Jacob's catchphrase, and Jacob stops him and does it himself. And I'm not even going to attempt to try it myself here in the recap.
Me either.
Alexa talks to somebody off screen about why it's important to have friends. As Charlotte Flair walks by, she thinks she's talking about her, but Alexa reveals that she's speaking to her doll, Lily, instead. So Alexa leaves and teases Charlotte about not making it to Money in the Bank. Where do you think all of this is headed with Charlotte and Alexa?
I think they're headed on to coin the phrase, collision course, obviously. But I do wonder about Alexa's sort of split personality at the minute. She's sort of like just a playful tease, in some of the heelness, and maybe not so much the spookiness that we used to associate with her. So I don't quite have a handle on what this character is yet. But it's getting there. It's being fleshed out week by week, which is fine.
Yeah. She's I don't want to say she's like dark. She's more of a sort of like light gray. Like if
it's more
I
of
had
a shit stir really than a kind of leaning into the supernatural part of it. She seemed to be using Lily as a prop to knowingly annoy Charlotte. That's what I took from this, rather than she was actually talking to the doll. But other people might take a different view.
Yeah. So, but also with the amount of attention they're giving Charlotte and Alexa, I wonder if that might telegraph Alexa not winning Money in the Bank and instead being paired off with Charlotte for like a SummerSlam or something like that. So we shall see. Secret Harvest are taking on BFAB and Michin, and they build up to a big hot tag for Michin. Chelsea tries to interrupt, but Zelina comes out to stop her. Eat Defeat is delivered to Alba Fire as BFAB hits her neckbreaker X Factor finisher, which Wade calls the Fab You Lost neckbreaker. And Tessitore reacts as if this was the greatest invention of all time. Awful name. Awful name. Maybe you think different. Maybe I'm in a minority. Do you like the Fab You Lost neckbreaker?
Come on, Way. It's BFAB. We're BFAB boosters here at Post Wrestling. So no, it's a silly and terrible name.
Like that's the type of name that they might have come up with in the writers' room, where they're just like laughing at each other because of how stupid it sounds, and there you go. All right.
Yeah.
So
a bit of a nothing match, a very quick one, and it seemed to be more about setting up this addition to Saturday night's main event because of Chelsea and Zelina brawling during the match.
Clearly, the audience has had much enjoyment out of this Chelsea Green U.S. title run.
Oh yeah.
I, however, continue to feel like I think the U.S. title, especially at this point, any of these mid-card titles should be used to advance your future world champions. And I think we could tell by this point, Chelsea Green is not one of those people, at least not from what I'm sensing, right? I'm kind of ready to move on from like this sort of like semi-comedic world and on to the Giulias, on to like, I don't know, maybe even a Naomi or like Jade, if you want to say like for this level of like seriousness in competition. So ready for it. Legado, we got their meeting here. We're presuming this is Santos's home. So they found Berto this week. Berto is sick of Santos's stupid pep talks. Santos says this isn't a pep talk, it's about business. And he brings up June 7th, Worlds Collide, where they're going to come together to face the best that, I guess, the other side has to offer. AAA.
I think they were just mentioned as they.
They. Okay. Yeah, they. They said they can stand victorious this time in front of their people, and Berto is very reluctant to agree and simply walks away. But Santos is confident that he will soon understand. And we get our match graphic. Our first announcement for Worlds Collide. This is Legado del Fantasma taking on El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr., Psycho Clown, and Pagano. So. Our first glimpse of seeing how they're going to build towards Worlds Collide using, I would say, some like what feels like some pretty prime real estate here on SmackDown to tell their stories, at least on one side. Yeah. They announced that this will be on YouTube in Spanish and English, Saturday, June 7th, of course, the afternoon of Money in the Bank. So your thoughts on this show as well as what else we may be able to see?
Triple Eyes remains something of a mystery to me, although I've seen all three of the competitors at one time or another, whether on a Triple Mania or on their travels to other promotions. I'm very intrigued by Worlds Collide, and I'll certainly be tuning in. And I think on the WWE side of things, even though it's a B or C or D storyline, I don't mind this dissension within Legado. They've been doing it for several weeks, sort of Berto's disaffection with the other two, and Andrade almost trying to sort of coax him over to his side. And these are really good wrestlers too, all three of them. So I enjoy, I may be on a little island here, but I kind of don't mind this at all, particularly because they're very good in ring, and I feel like if Andrade ends up with Berto as a tag team against the other two, then I feel that's a direction I'll probably enjoy. But as for Worlds Collide, definitely intrigued to see this.
Faction and tag team breakups almost feel a little cliche and maybe groan-inducing these days. But I mean, in this case, it's the most interesting thing that I think the team has actually been a part of. It's an actual storyline for them. So we get a match here. Phoenix and Jimmy Uso taking on JC Mateo and Jacob Fatu. This is one of those matches where like you kind of look at it and you kind of have to sit back and think about how much fresh blood the WWE has brought in just even the past year, if not recent months here. Jacob Fatu a bit longer than that, but Rey Fenix, Jeff Cobb, all of a sudden, like all on SmackDown, it's kind of crazy to think about. So Fatu and JC aren't getting along, and Jacob tags himself in. Phoenix delivers an incredible springboard corkscrew plancha with an assist from Jimmy here, taking us to commercial break. Jimmy sells for Jacob after the break, leading to a big hot tag to Phoenix again, and Phoenix again just goes nuts here. Just delivers some spectacular offense. Notably here, captured all from a continuous camera shot from the ring apron here, which I thought was a really cool way to see all this from a position that close to the ring. Crowd is really hot. Jimmy goes up top, but Solo steps up to the apron to interrupt him, to give him an offer. We can presume to, I guess, join him. And this allows Jeff Cobb to avoid his big dive and hitting the Tour of the Islands for the victory. Your thoughts on the tag match?
I really enjoyed Phoenix, particularly in this match. And as they went to break, like you said, that corkscrew plancha was being replayed in slow motion and just looked absolutely perfection. Like something from a video game. The distraction I didn't love, but I never really do, particularly as it was kind of such a slow motion one. Jimmy's up there to deliver the Uso splash, and he just stops to listen to Solo. It's like, this isn't the time, bro. Talk to me another time. But I know, look, it's basically a pro wrestling move, the distraction, and but it just felt a bit slow motion. It seemed to take a little too long. Kind of irritated me slightly.
Yeah, it's a pretty tired wrestling thing that I don't necessarily think will be changing anytime soon. I think we're just, especially for television, where like the desire is to build a significant plot point while also simultaneously giving an ending, while also trying to protect the babyface. Maybe the palette is only so limited, and this is, the distraction is always going to be something we have to rely on.
I agree that it's something they've got to lean on in a sense, particularly in weekly television. And I'm glad that one thing we haven't seen in a while is the distraction by theme music.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't seen that in a bit, where someone's theme plays and sort of the match just stops as everyone.
That's a pay-per-view level distraction. Okay, I've got to save that. Yeah, I thought the in-ring this match was very strong. In particular, I felt like this was the closest we've seen to Rey Fenix in a non-WWE sort of version of Phoenix than we've had since he's debuted. He just like worked so fast and delivered such spectacular offense. And I don't know if like the tag setting allowed that for him to just like come in and work really, really fast. But this is the Rey Fenix that actually stands out, that feels like, he's somebody special, like he came across in AEW. So I hope this is the direction they're going to continue to take him with these matches. I wouldn't mind a continued tag team with Jimmy Uso. Like, I thought it made Jimmy Uso look much more look much more interesting. So yeah, let's see where they go with this. Byron Saxton is with LA Knight here, and Knight cuts a really strong promo ahead of the triple threat against Nakamura and Black tonight for Money in the Bank qualifying. We hear from R-Truth, who reiterates that he's not facing his childhood hero John Cena tomorrow. Instead, he says, he talks about what corrupted John Cena was power. The more power he got, the more fame he got, the more disconnected he felt Cena. He was no longer responding to text messages and calls. He thought it was something initially that R-Truth did, but he spoke to others and they said that they felt the same thing. The crowd at this point starts wutting the entire promo, and Truth almost kind of encouraged it with like the speech pattern and also just his prompting of the crowd to respond at certain times. He goes on to say that John Cena is like the goblin in Lord of the Rings, corrupted by his precious, the championship. Truth says, it's not the championship, John, it's your ego. You stopped having fun, and now you're mad when others want to. He doesn't know if he can bring Cena back, but he's going to try. He's not going to let him ruin his joy. If Cena wants to ruin his wrestling, he wants to save wrestling, and to do that, he has to save John Cena. And he ends it by saying, if Cena wins, we riot. Like when we're just kind of reading the text, Neal, I feel like this was like a good attempt at a semi-serious promo for R-Truth, but the fact that it was a semi-serious promo from R-Truth is, I think, what felt off. Maybe not just for me, but I think for the audience, because he has never cut a serious promo in years, and I think we're expecting a bit more like traditional sort of like delusion, from Truth, and it didn't really come. How did you feel about this?
From the moment he came out without delivering, without dancing along and delivering the rap, he was sort of looking very serious. I thought, oh no, what are we going to get here? And It was a miss. It missed with the crowd, like they were wadding, like you said, and then he made the rookie mistake, really, for a guy who's like the consummate veteran of repeating himself even louder. So of course that just encourages the crowd to what even more. It just felt very out of character, and they tried to shoehorn in a few like funny lines about Gollum and the Precious and stuff like that, but
Not that funny.
not funny, and it really isn't the R-Truth that we've seen week after week after week. Are we to believe that he's suddenly become this very serious, thoughtful person just because of the AA through the press conference table?
Well, what this feud was missing was a big heat angle from Cena, like obliterating R-Truth. You know, this innocent, lovable person. Like all we got was an AA through a table at a press conference. He needed to come out and he needed to bust this dude open. All right, we needed to see a bloodied R-Truth face, or at least like some version of like a violent attack that would have prompted a violent, serious response from Truth. And because we never had that, we never really had anything from Cena throughout all of this. I mean, it feels like a one-sided feud. And for a Saturday night's main event, maybe that's the excuse that like we can have. It's just a Saturday night's main event, I suppose. But
I think we can assume I'm assuming at least that this will be more of an angle than a match. That hopefully tomorrow we get that brutal beatdown, and perhaps whoever comes to, and I don't know who it'll be, but whoever comes to Truth's rescue, that will set up the next program for Cena. I mean, that's what I envisage happening.
I believe like the reports or rumors of like getting a Travis Scott tag match or even multi-man match with Cena, with like a Cody on the other side, maybe the Usos on the other side or something like that. Some version of something there. So maybe we can expect some of that coming up. All right, let's go to our, we got a Naomi and Jade and Nia video, a preview of next week's Money in the Bank qualifier. And then we go to our next qualifying match here. It's Aleister Black taking on Nakamura, taking on LA Knight. Black and Nakamura, their interaction is kind of being built up as like a battle of two strikers. Black hits a moonsault to the floor, but sells the knees after hitting another tope con hilo. Nakamura is about to hit the Kinshasa, but Black meets him with the Black Mass. However, Knight steps in and throws Black out of the ring, stealing the cover. So Knight enters the match with Solo as the two qualifiers so far. Your thoughts on all of this?
I really enjoyed this match. I thought it was just really high paced. I loved the sequences between Black and Nak.
Black and Nak
attack. Yeah, they have to do that at some point. But the striking exchanges were really convincing and really good and really well timed. And it reminded me that Shinsuke is not done, at all. He can more than hold his own in the ring. But yeah, probably the right person to go through in the end, stealing the pin.
Yeah, this was a brief glimpse of what an Aleister Black run might be like outside of the Miz verse, but we're bringing him right back into it because following this we got Miz and Melo reacting to Aleister Black's loss. They're happy about seeing Black losing. Melo says that he's in the Money in the Bank match, qualifying match next week, but Miz reveals that it was him who gave up the spot to let Melo take it. He continues to, gaslight Melo into thinking that he's the orchestrator of all of this. He says Melo will execute the play exactly as Miz designed it next week. And Melo says something to the effect of like I'm your guy or something like that. This continues to feel incredibly out of character from the Melo we knew in NXT, and that's not to say like you have to be exactly the character that you were in NXT, but it just feels so out of touch with like the strengths of Carmelo Hayes as a character here. Like this man never needed anybody to lead him. He was a leader himself. So to have Miz all of a sudden like give him directions feels dumb, unless of course this is all Melo letting Miz think he's playing him when he's actually playing the Miz. I think that's even more groan-inducing, quite frankly. So I don't like any of this. I don't like Aleister Black being a part of it. I don't know if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, Neal.
Not really. I mean, I just think that Carmelo Hayes has been misused right since his call up. I mean, he was, I think he was in the first picks at least for the draft. and they booked him virtually immediately into a losing effort with Cody Rhodes, but one where he got the Rhodes handshake at the end, and it felt like they're going to absolutely strap the rocket onto this guy on the main card, or on the main roster, I should say. And they, since then, it's been just a steady slip down the card. He's propping up the bottom half of the mid card. This Miz pairing is sort of groan inducing. Miz is doing his best, I think, to get Melo over, and I'm sure he will, because he's a very unselfish performer. But the storyline just feels off.
Chemistry,
and I agree with you. Like,
off.
Yeah, the chemistry's not there. It's sort of non-existent, really, because Carmelo Hayes is far better, like you said, as playing the sort of him, I am him character that he had in NXT. Yeah. This with the goofy, although I did laugh the first week, it was unveiled, the Dre necklace and all of that just feels a wee bit kind of silly.
To me, the chemistry in this team feels as off as Miz's pairing with Ric Flair for those weeks. All right, we got Solo Sikoa in the back with JC and Jacob. And all this tells Jacob that he's in the final Money in the Bank qualifier next week, to which Jacob responds favorably. But Solo pretends to be happy about it, but I think might be secretly nervous. So Jacob could potentially join Solo in the Money in the Bank match, and we'll see how those tensions may play out. Bianca Belair delivers a video here, and I believe this is the first we've seen of her since the Money in the Bank. WrestleMania Triple Threat. She gets a little emotional in this video, where she says, for the past 6 months, they have been the most challenging of her career. She got injured, she lost at Mania, she lost her friendships, and she shows off her broken finger injury that she suffered in the match. She says she's been going through it, but will get through it, and she's still standing. She says, here's to a new beginning. The only consistent thing in life is change and me, and her best is yet to come. So I felt a pretty strong personality profile on Bianca Belair, one that I think is a good sort of like resetter for her to tell the audience what type of character she should be. I think she kind of left almost feeling a little bit heelish, to be quite honest. You know, there was a lot of suspicion of her being the culprit behind the Naomi attack. I think from this we can tell that she had nothing to do with it whatsoever, and I think it's an indication that we're going to be cheering for her, or we should be cheering for her as this sort of like babyface that overcomes odds.
Yeah, she's been through the ringer, and now she's trying to get back to where, to climb the mountain again. And I feel like, yes, that's what this was aimed to do, because she'd been catching a lot of boos, before Mania. So giving her that space, I think, was a good idea. They've done it on a higher level, I guess, with Cody, who was also sort of, going into Mania, beginning to get sort of not the reaction that he used to. So I think, this was very effective.
So they also announced that she will make her return next week in her hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee, on SmackDown. Also on SmackDown, we have Andrade versus Fatu versus Melo in the final Money in the Bank qualifier. Jade versus Nia versus Naomi, and in another Money in the Bank qualifier. And John Cena will also be present. So one of his dates will be used in Knoxville, Tennessee, coming off of Saturday night's main event. So I think that has to tell you, well, we'll either be getting the angle on Saturday night's main event, or we'll get it on the Friday. So
yeah,
our main event, Fraxiom taking on the Street Profits for the WWE Tag Team Championships. Fraxiom have won 4 matches straight, and including beating, of course, the Street Profits in a non-title match after their TLC match. We start things off with just an amazing showcase of dives from Fraxiom early on. Frazier is on the top rope, and then he jumps back down, to which Barrett calls a fake out. I'm not so sure if that was intentional, or if that was just like Barrett kind of covering a mistiming, but
I'm pretty convinced it was the latter.
Okay.
That he just slipped backwards, but landed on the apron and went again. That's what it looked like to me.
Barrett was very, very convincing then, because he's like, I can't believe we saw that. We've never seen a talent, be able to execute a fake out like that before. How novel. He was as excited for that fake out as Tessitore was for the Fabulous.
Fabulous.
Yeah. We go through 2 commercial breaks, and Fraxiom have locked double finishers onto the Profits. Dawkins then delivers a Northern Light suplex to Frazier to break a rear naked choke from Axiom. Frazier repeatedly attempts a running superplex. He finally achieves it, but with Axiom completing and chasing the Dragon to close the sequence for a 2 count. Doomsday blockbuster from the Profits as Frazier springboard dives at a very last second to break that up. Fraxiom then deliver a Spanish Fly Phoenix Splash combo. This time Tez breaks it up at the very last second. Just incredible speed from those two in breaking up these near falls. At this point, DIY and Candice show up, and they're neutralized immediately by the machine guns. Ford dives over the corner onto all of them, which kind of takes Ford out. This leaves Dawkins and Frazier in the ring. Dawkins hits the anointment, but Ford isn't there to tag in. When he does, the lights go out, and we come back with the return of the Wyatt Six. And Ford, I think, gets like pretty comical reaction to this because he's on the top rope and he does like the crossing his heart motion. The Wyatt Six start attacking, and it is called a DQ. And if you thought this audience would be upset by that, you would be very wrong, because they were chanting "Holy shit!" They were not upset by this at all. They were very excited to see the Wyatt Six for the first time, I believe, since December here. So they've kept them apart for very long. A little bit of awkward timing here in this attack from Nikki Cross, who looked like ahead of her, a dive onto Candice, was probably waiting for some sort of cue from the camera. Anyway, Gacy and Loomis deliver a pop-up powerbomb senton. Uncle Howdy hits a mandible claw to Frazier, then follows up with the Sister Abigail to Johnny Gargano as we close the show with the Lee-fitting Paul Levesque signature, the Wyatt Six posing in the ring with a birthday cake right in front of them. And of course, that significance being this day would have been Bray Wyatt's 30th birthday. So interesting little, I guess, homage there. And maybe part of the thinking in re-debuting the Wyatt Six on this particular evening, to coincide with Bray Wyatt's birthday. Your thoughts first on the match and then the post-match angle, Neal.
The match was great. Yeah, and the crowd were upset when DIY ran out, because they thought, oh no, they're going to ruin this was really great match we're going to see. And then the Motor City machine guns sort of intercepted that. But yes, I expect in the arena it's a different feeling. When the lights go out and something like this happens, you do get excited. For me, I don't really care that much about the Wyatt Six, so it's a purely personal thing. I thought that them returning like this in the middle of a really good match was okay. They're back. I wonder what they'll do next week. And like you said, some of the multiple attacks that they're having to do and get on camera seemed like people were missing their cues, and it was a wee bit messy as well. But I did like the touch of the blowing out the candle, and look, I'm not going to pretend I knew what I knew the significance of it immediately. I don't have those sorts of dates up in my head, but I quickly checked it out and realized what that was, and thought, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah. I certainly came off of this, I think, more positive on it than I think you did, Neal. I'm somebody who, so I felt the Wyatt Six debuted very strong on Raw for several weeks, and then they just kind of petered out and started to feel less and less special, especially as they were getting tangled up with, like, what was it, like the likes of like The Miz and Karrion Kross. They've kept them away long enough, and much of that, of course, due to like Uncle Howdy's injury that they kind of didn't really have much control over. But it's kind of helped them, at least in this case, where being away long enough, debuting on SmackDown now has kind of refreshed them and made us forget about maybe some of the weaker parts of it. The spectacle of just still seeing the collective, I think, feels really cool, at least on this first week, upon their return. So to me, like, they add something to what already feels like a very strong tag team division on SmackDown here. First of all, the match with here, I thought was outstanding. I thought Fraxiom, already the best tag team company in the company, and many would say the best tag team in the world. The division I thought was already getting very hot even without them, but adding them kind of like it's like hitting the Nas button, you know, like they're elevating almost every single match that they're involved in here, and they took the profits, in my opinion, to an even higher standard than usual. So, I went from hating like the merry-go-roundness of this like entire tag division to now feeling like this is one of the hotter things in the WWE, and much of that is thanks to Fraxiom. So now you're injecting the Wyatts into it, which you know, might not necessarily match them in terms of in-ring quality, but adds a new dynamic to it. You know, you're adding a bit of spooky stuff, so it feels a bit more well-rounded. It allows people like DLI to maybe play off of that. Trying to think what other heel tag teams. They're kind of the only heels right now, actually, in the division. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, like are there any other heel tag teams
What
right
are
now?
Pretty Deadly meant to be at the minute? I'm never
I
sure.
think they're faces still.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
So
I get what you're saying, Way. You know, and I think they add something. I think my reaction tonight was colored somewhat by just enjoying this match and then it being, you know, interrupted. But at the same time, that happens a lot on the weekly WWE television. And the only other thing I would say is that this tag division, if this show, as we pray and hope, goes back to 2 hours, they'll probably need to prune it and send some of these tag teams to Raw because it's very scant up there, you know, for those titles.
Yeah, certainly. I enjoyed this edition of SmackDown, Neal. You know, both just in terms of this, I think strong in-ring content, despite maybe lack of finish. I enjoyed much of the wrestling I saw here. I think the triple threat qualifiers continued to add like a certain special feeling to the pace of the matches, and also just like something for everybody to fight for. So I thought it was an entertaining show that I completely cut the commercials out of. So I ended up watching in 2 hours instead of 3.
Okay. Yeah, I was watching it live, so I had the for international viewers, the beepy boop tune for 3 minutes every so often.
You don't say, because I think oh shit. Well, we used to have it here, but we used to have a soundboard for it. We don't have it right now.
John played it one time. I remember. Yeah. But look, it was pretty good, and it lacked a little bit of star power. I think I'm not sure it fed wonderfully into what we're going to get tomorrow night. You know, which they should have been. They were selling it throughout, but you know there wasn't much direct lead in to Saturday night's main event, and I think it also lacked, you know, Roman, Cody, you know, the bigger players, Randy. So it didn't have that going for it, but still an entertaining show, and I'm not sorry I watched it or anything like that.
Well, we are forcing you to watch these no matter what, Neal. So thank you for being here, and thank you for joining me as just somebody to, you know, share opinions with, as always. This ends, or at least it nearly concludes, Neal Flanagan week, because of course we're going back to the post wrestling cafe to get your thoughts on tonight's edition of SmackDown, as well as all the wrestling that's coming up this particular weekend. Want to hear your thoughts, even on the cancellation of WrestleMania in New Orleans and the move to wherever the city may end up being. So join us in the Post Wrestling Cafe as we continue the show. And at this point, we bid farewell to all of our free listeners. Come back here tomorrow and also on Sunday for our coverage of Saturday night's main event, NXT Battleground, WWE Battleground, and also AEW Double or Nothing live immediately after those events.